many are able to cash rent their land. Knowing how to set a price and when to change it can be pretty tricky. Our Grow co-host Marylyn Barnett has more.
Now, many know that a lot of landowners, they like to rent land to farm or raise cattle. It's common. Now, with commodity prices down, many are wondering just what to do. And Alan Lennox is the UNL Extension educator in Platte County and joins us now here this afternoon. And Alan, you have suggested starting point for rent at 30% of the gross revenue per acre. How did you come up with this equation, and can you explain how it can be applied?
Okay, well, the 30% number simply comes from the idea that if you were going to do a crop share rent, that you would have about 30% of the crop go to the landlord as their payment for the rent, and then the 70% would go to the tenant for doing the farming. And then the 30% share that would go to the landlord, they would pay no expenses except for their property tax and other land charges. So that's where that's coming from, and so I'm just applying it over to cash rent, saying that if we're going to discuss what cash rent should be, let's go back to the crop share, and if the landowners are getting 30% on a crop share rent with no expenses, then that's about what they should get from a cash rent with no expenses, and so the whole thing becomes equal. But I think that we have to understand that there's supply and demand involved here, and we may not be able to get to this kind of a number depending on where we're at with the rent right now.
And this is just a calculation. It might not be the only thing that is the answer. Kind of the tenant and the landowner, they end up really coming up with a deal, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it doesn't make any difference what I say or anyone from the university says or anyone from anywhere else says where rents might end up. It has to be still a negotiation with the landlord and the tenant. Essentially, in any negotiation, if you're buying a car, if you're buying a refrigerator, or if you're cash renting your farm ground, whatever the tenant's willing to pay and whatever the landlord's willing to accept, that's what the rent's going to be. And what we have to understand here is that supply and demand is a huge factor into this. And right now, the demand exceeds supply, as far as I can tell. And so, as long as the demand exceeds supply, we may not see cash rents go down by very much. It may be a very stable situation, or they may even rise slowly yet. But I don't think they should. I think they should, depending on where we're at right now, they should really start to stabilize or start to decrease.
And this calculation, of course, is a place to start. Some people don't even know where to start. So also, in the mix of all of this, there's written leases, too. It's an essential business practice when leasing farm property. And you guys at the Extension, you have a few things that people can keep in mind when doing that, too, right?
Yeah, the written lease is the key to any good lease agreement. In many cases where I hear of people that still don't have written leases, it's a lease that was done as a handshake or a verbal agreement between grandpa and grandma and a great uncle and a great aunt. When that generation passes away, then it becomes hearsay as to exactly what the what the verbal lease was for. So we have to be real careful about that. It's better to get the leases written down, and that's a key component to the workshops we're trying to do. And then the other part of that is that if you get a hold of any extension office, they can go to or you can go on your own computer, go to AgLease 101, aglease101.org, and that website will get you a sample lease for cash rents or for crop share rents. And you can start filling in the blank there and use the ones you want to use and cross out the sections you don't want to use so you can develop your own written lease. A very important thing to do, and it's just a sound business practice.
Stay tuned, your Grow Weather is up next.